Hey guys, this is Rob, Sigma 3 Survival School, and today I want to introduce you to Mike Yancey. He's the owner of PineHollowLongbows.com. Go check out his website. And basically what we're going to be doing over the next 4 days is we've got a big primitive bow building class, and he's going to take us step by step on how to construct an Osage orange bow as well as a hickory bow, and the video is going to be on the hickory bow. And we're going to cover kind of all aspects of bow making. And bow making isn't necessarily a survival skill. It's really more of a primitive long-term living skill. So we're going to be using some modern implements and things like that. But all these things can be done completely primitively, you know, from scratch. So just stay tuned. This is going to be a fairly long series of videos, and absolutely make sure that you go check out this guy's website. He's got phenomenal bows, any kind of primitive archery stuff that you can imagine he's got for sale at really, really good prices. Books, bows, backing, strings, you name it, he's got it on PineHollowLongbows.com.
Alright, I'm Mike Yancey, and my company is Pine Hollow Longbows out of Van Buren, Arkansas. And what we're going to do is show you how to make bows out of Osage orange or hickory, whichever you choose. It's the same type of construction no matter what type of wood you use. And I'll show you how to do it from a raw log or staves that we've already got roughed out. But you can go as far with it. Once you learn a basic bow building method, you can get it as elaborate as you want. What we're going to be building with just simple hand tools. It's just a simple bow just like this. It's a self bow, no backing. It's got a bear grease and beeswax finish on it, and it's about as traditional as you can get other than modern string material that I prefer to use. And then we can go, I'll cover how to do a sinew back bow. This has a whitetail sinew underneath the rawhide, so it's a lot more elaborate type bow. It's a little bit more work and a lot of drying time with your sinew. These bows here, again, are very complex. This is a sinew back bow with rawhide on the back of it, and it's Osage orange, and it's had heat bending to make it have that type of shape. It's got a lot of artwork on it, and they're very fast. One of the advantages to that type of bow is you can make a lot shorter bow out of a lesser quality piece of wood that will hold up and allow you to draw it a full draw length. This is about as simple as you can get. It's Osage with the sinew backing. This one's a lot more elaborate. It's got the sinew and a rawhide with a lot of reflex tip overlays, and it's antelope rawhide with antelope sinew and antelope tip overlays. And I've taken few animals with that bow. What we'll cover too, we'll do some heat bending. Most of the staves that I brought are very, very straight. There's no need to even heat them. But there is an advantage to heat bending that you can put reflex in them. And what that does is it allows your bow to shoot better and faster and have less string follow. By the end of the day, we'll have a bow roughed out for you that'll look something like this without the sinew. We're not going to do any sinew backing, and we'll just rough out a bow, and then tomorrow we'll start going into the tillering process. But these are Osage bows that have been heat bent and sinew backed, so it kind of gives you an idea of what they're going to look like. And the same type deal with just a self bow. And I guess now we'll split some of these and give you an idea of how they split and how you can do it on your own at home. Edges and splitting them all. And with the self bow, you know, a lot of guys, they want to cut them out on a bandsaw or a sawmill, and you don't do that. Because what you have to do is follow that linear grain that runs up and down on the wood. A bow lays in the log like this. Here's your here's a stave. This is just a chunk out of it. You got your bark, and then your sapwood, that white wood, and then it gets down into the hard heartwood. And what you're going to do on hickory, all you have to do is remove the bark. That becomes the back of your bow. For Osage, you have to go down into a growth ring. A lot more complicated. but a little bit better bow. The back of the bow, the part that faces away from you when you're shooting it, is just underneath the bark, underneath the sapwood there. And that's what's called the back. The belly is what faces you when you shoot. That's where you get your poundage removal and to get limbs bending evenly. Both of these limbs have to bend at the same time, and you get your poundage removal by thickness removal. If you can double your thickness and only double the poundage, but if you double the width, you only double the poundage. But if you double your thickness, it's 8 times the poundage. So let me get these unstrung, and then we'll get started on splitting some staves.
I have a question, Mike. You said that even any of these bows will take anything. So that most simple bow you showed us, does that apply for that? What's the biggest thing you could take with that most simple bow?
Anything.
What's the poundage on it? Do you have?
It's about 60 pounds. And that one, I've taken, I think, 4 deer with that bow and just blow through them.
Right.
You know, so they're very quiet. Most of the stuff you shoot doesn't even know that they've been hit. Okay, let me split this. But what I'm trying to do is there's a bad spot down on this end where it kind of has a little valley in it where it rolls along. And I want to at least split that off. But I'm going to try to split it right down the middle and go right through this spot right here and see what we've got. And it'll kind of give you an idea of what we're working with.
And you just split it to get it to that point where you're at?
And it doesn't matter what kind of wood it is, it's going to follow the way that tree grew. So you can't split it wrong. If you're splitting it, you want to take advantage of any natural cracks that are in it. There's always going to be one going right through the middle. So it went around that knot. It's got a stump on there, Jay. It ain't gonna. Now we've got 2 good staves. This one we'll cut it off probably right about there and end up with we can get a good 60, about a 64 inch bow. To figure the draw length, you just put a measure right in the center of the chest bone there, and where the middle fingers touch naturally, that's your draw length. And his is 24 inches.
So then we would double that and add 10%
for the length of the bow. That's for a handle bow. For these
48, another 5 inches.
Yeah, that's for a rigid handle type bow, like any of these. But this one, it bends through the handle, so you can build a lot shorter bow.
That's the simple one.
Yeah, you can basically just double the draw length and be okay on a bend through the handle bow. But on a rigid handle, you've got 4 inches for your handle, and then you got 2 inches above it and 2 inches below it that's not bending. So you've got several inches there that takes out of the working part of the bow. Yeah, and this is one of the critical parts of building a hickory self bow, is that you want to get the bark off without damaging the white wood just underneath, because that's going to be the back of your bow. And what I'm going to do is try to get this draw knife just underneath it and try to get it to come off in one whole piece. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. I don't know if it depends on the stage that the stave was cut. This one's going to work.
You're getting all the way down to the belly there, though, aren't you?
No, the belly's down here. There's a cambium layer, it's an inner bark that lays just underneath the actual bark. And see this papery stuff here? It's not really bark and it's not really hardwood. It's got to come off, or it's going to eventually come off as you're bending the bow. But we want to get it off without any gouges or deep cuts in the back. These little strips that I'm doing, little white strips, they're not hurting anything. You'll do more damage with that hatchet than you'll do good on beating that bark. It'll make it where it just won't hardly come off.
So the main objective of this class is to teach you how to build a primitive bow from beginning to end. Somewhat from a survival skills standpoint, but really more of a primitive long-term living standpoint. We're using things like draw knives and rafts, things that you probably wouldn't carry in your survival kit or your bug out kit. But these can all be, supplemented with tools that I would normally carry, like saws, a Gransfors Brooks axe, a decent sized knife. And when you're removing, if you don't have a draw knife, you can take your large knife and kind of baton this outer section of the bark off, because this hickory is incredibly hard. And with a draw knife, this actually seems to be a little bit quicker. You can spend up to 30 minutes trying to get this outer bark off the outside, whereas just taking and using a batoning method seems to work pretty well for it.
Alright, we've established our back. We've taken all the bark off of it and down to the inner bark and got it scraped off. And now we're going to get the total length measurement of the bow, and we're going to divide that in half. And this one is 66 inches, so we're going to go 33 inches. The center of the handle is the center of the bow. And on this bow we're going to have a 4-inch handle. So we're going to go 2 inches above and below the handle, and then 2 inches above and below that for what's called the fade outs, where the thickness of the limb transitions from the handle into the belly of the bow. But we'll worry about that a little bit later, but we have to get those marks here at the start. Now we're going to get a center line, and this is a good straight clean piece of wood where we can just actually lay a line out and do it. If the wood had the linear grain going swirly, we would have to actually follow that, but this we don't. So we're just going to get our center measurements, and then we'll mark out the width of our bow and the shape of the handle. And we're going to put a shelf on this bow, but we can do that later on, but we have to accommodate by leaving enough wood in there to do it. The actual width of the limb will stay the same width for 6 inches down the length of the bow, and then it'll taper down to 1/2-inch nocks. So we'll get a 6-inch measurement and a center mark. We've got all of our marks down there all the way at each spot, and we'll start laying out the actual shape of the bow now. We're going to go 1/4 inch on each side of center at the end, and then 3/4 of an inch on each side of center for your main limb thickness width. Same thing at your fade here, you're going to go 3/4 on each side down to 1/2 on each side, and that will be where your limb transitions into the handle on the back of the bow. 3/4 and an inch. And we're going to flare out just a little bit at the center when we start marking it out to kind of give it a little bit of a bulb, a little bit more comfortable in the hand. We're going to kind of come a little bit outside of that mark, and that's going to give us a little bit of extra meat in that handle where we can actually cut a shelf. We won't decide which limb's going to be the upper or lower limb for cutting the shelf in until we've actually strung the bow the first time, and then whichever limb is stronger will be the bottom limb, and the upper limb will be the one that we'll actually cut a shelf in for a handle and a shelf type bow, a more modern type bow. They're easier to shoot when they've got a shelf, a little bit less critical to arrow spine, so you can shoot a wider range of shaft material, and the feathers don't cut your hand if you happen to have some rough feathers with a shelf type bow. And we're just getting rough layout here. It's not real critical that everything is exact. It's just we can eyeball it as we need to when we start removing the waste off the sides. We're just getting a pretty good layout of how the bow's going to look. And then we'll start removing it with a hatchet and then go to a rasp. There's what our bow's going to look like.